All right, let's talk about a challenge that, pretty much every cloud architect runs into. We're talking about moving those old, tricky, traditional applications over to Google Cloud. And specifically, we're going to dig into the storage strategy because getting that right is absolutely everything.
So let's get right to it. You've got this app, right? It's critical to the business, it's been chugging along for years, and it works. But it's built on a classic network file system, NFS. So the big question is, how in the world do you move that thing to the cloud without a massive, months-long rewrite? That's what we're going to figure out.
Okay, so before we even start talking about solutions, let's just take a second to really understand why this is such a common and, frankly, frustrating problem to begin with. So the whole thing really boils down to this dependency on what's called a shared POSIX file system. Now, don't let the term throw you off. All POSIX really is, it's like a universal language for files. It's a standard for how operating systems are supposed to handle basic stuff like read, write, open, close. And these old apps, they're just hardwired to expect this kind of shared access to just be there.
Think about your classic on-prem setup. It probably looks a lot like this, right? You've got a bunch of virtual machines, maybe each running a piece of your app, but they all need to read and write to the very same set of files, often at the same time. And to do that, they all connect to one central NFS server. It's basically just a big shared hard drive that all your servers can see.
So the natural question is, how do you replicate that in the cloud? Well, Google's most direct answer is a service called FileStore. And at first glance, it looks like the super easy path. But is the easy path always the right one?
First off, what even is Cloud File Store? Well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a fully managed NFS file server that lives on Google Cloud. That means Google is handling all the hardware, all the patching, all the headaches. You just get a simple NFS endpoint that you can connect your stuff to.
And this is where the appeal really shines through. The process is just dead simple. You spin up a file store instance, you mount it on your virtual machines or your Kubernetes clusters the same way you would on-prem, and that's it. For a lot of apps, it just works. No drama.
And that is the absolute killer feature of FileStore. When you're in a hurry, when the goal is to get an application into the cloud right now, what we call a lift and shift, the fact that you can pull it off with almost zero code changes is a huge, huge win.
Okay, so File Store sounds amazing. We're done here, right? Well, hang on a second, because to really be a good architect, you have to look at the whole picture. We need to compare it to the other storage options in GCP, and that's where things get really interesting.
And this is the question every single one of us has to ask. Is that short-term win, that fast and easy migration, worth what might be some long-term architectural compromises or even higher costs down the road?
So to answer that, we've got to evaluate everything based on a few key factors. We're talking about performance, speed and throughput. We're talking about scaling and elasticity. How easily does it grow with you? How available and resilient is it? And of course, the bottom line, what's it going to cost? These are really the pillars of any solid cloud decision.
Now, this is where the trade-offs become crystal clear. You've got FileStore, which we know is perfect for those legacy NFS apps needing that shared POSIX access. But then, look over at cloud storage. That's object storage. It's not a file system at all. You talk to it with an API. This makes it perfect for modern cloud-native apps. I mean, it's basically infinitely scalable, and the cost per gigabyte is incredibly low. And then you've got persistent disk. That's block storage. Think of it like a super fast local hard drive that you attach to just one VM. It's all about high IOPS for things like databases. You see, they all solve very different problems.
And this whole comparison leads us to a much bigger, more strategic choice that every migration project faces. When do you take the time to actually redesign your application for the cloud, instead of just rehosting it as is?
I love this quote. It just cuts right to the heart of the issue. Just because you move your big, clunky application to the cloud doesn't magically make it a great cloud application. Sometimes you're just paying more to run the same old problems in a brand new data center.
So let's picture what this before state looks like. You've got your classic monolith, now running in the cloud. Every single piece of that application is hammering away at one central file store instance. This can create massive performance bottlenecks. It's a single point of failure. And you know what? It can get really expensive when you try to scale it. Now compare that with the after state. This is the dream, right? Here, the app's been redesigned into modern microservices. Each little independent service talks to its own cloud storage bucket. This architecture is way more scalable, it's more resilient, and is almost always going to be cheaper to run. Okay, so with all of this swirling around in our heads, how do you actually make the right call for your project? Let's boil everything we've talked about down into a simple, actionable guide.
Think of this as your cheat sheet. It's pretty straightforward. If you absolutely must have a shared POSIX file system for that legacy app you just can't change right now, file store is your answer. If you're building something new or you can refactor an old app to handle unstructured data, then cloud storage is the scalable, cost-effective beast you want. And finally, if you just need screaming fast performance for a single machine, like a database, persistent disk is the tool for that job.
So we'll end on this thought right here. When you're planning your next cloud migration, the most important question you can ask yourself is this: are you just looking for a new home for your old problems, or are you seizing this opportunity to truly solve them for good? Making the right storage choice is, so often, the first and most critical step on that path.